want you to know that I'm a person who believes that I'm here for a reason. And that reason has been to connect people who want to make a difference in the lives of others by changing public policy. I am a lawyer. I'm also a former state senator with 20 years of working in public advocacy. But as she suggested, I'm also a daughter, a mother, a friend, and a coworker. I am like you. You woke up this morning and you looked outside and you saw that the sun had come up. Hallelujah. So you yawn, you stretch, you maybe read the paper or watch the news. If you're like me, you've got a dog that has to go out and has to come in. You've gone on through this whole day thinking about a lot of things. You've thought about your job, your family, yourselves. You maybe have worried about a few things, like whether or not you need to get new tires, an oil change, what you might fix for dinner. Chances are, since you're here today, you're not worrying right now about your health care. Otherwise, you'd be sitting in a doctor's office, right? But I am going to ask you to think about your relationship with health care and how you can be a patient partner to create new cures. You see, I am the youngest in a family of 5. I have an older brother, Scott, and the one with the little funny grin, that's my brother Frank. Frank was one of those kids that really had a lot of extra energy, if you know what I mean. He was always getting into something, and it was really kind of like he had a little extra light around him. You maybe have met 2 or 3 people like this in your entire life, but I was lucky enough that one of those people, for me, was my brother Frank. Frank could really always make people laugh. He could always find humor in any situation and a friend, and he especially made his children laugh. So it was very devastating to us when Frank found out that he had been diagnosed with incurable cancer, multiple myeloma. But you know what? Frank took this on just like he did everything else. He decided he was going to live life while dying. And he was going to use this to deliver a message of hope to others. And part of the way that he did that was to participate in clinical trials. Now, I'm going to just tell you, that was not an easy decision. Because if you've ever known anybody who's participated in clinical trials, there is great risk in what you're doing. You don't know the outcome. But we believed, as he did, that this would give him a chance at a long-term remission. There was one night when we all got called to come to the hospital in Little Rock. And we all drove in from wherever we were, and we held our breath because we didn't know if he was going to live. Now, he did live through that treatment, but 6 months later, he made a decision that he was no longer going to endure treatments. He wanted to go home and die with dignity. We honored that decision. It was not an easy decision for him or his family, but I am eternally grateful for the healthcare team that recognized that he wanted to die with dignity in his home, and he did. He died held by his wife, surrounded by his children. I am so eternally grateful for the compassion that those researchers showed for my brother. They wanted to make a difference in the lives of others like Frank, and I believe that that research has led to new cures in multiple myeloma today. So you see, Frank left a legacy of hope. And though our family hasn't suffered this tragedy, that's also my responsibility to share that message of hope with you. Because I believe behind every healthcare innovation, there is a compelling story like Frank's. There's a child that can hear again. There's a veteran who served this country who's able to walk again. There's a grandmother who's got a serious chronic illness that because of new treatment and new cures is able to spend time with her grandchildren. What a beautiful story each one of them tells. Each of them tells a story about new cures and technology made possible by healthcare innovators, thousands of healthcare innovators around the world. So it was fascinating to me to find out that those healthcare innovators also wanted to partner with patients and learn more about that patient experience, be real patient partners in innovation. When I first heard this, I was fascinated. I said, my goodness, this is just like a campaign. I'm real familiar with that. I can do that, right? Let's go get the billboard. Let's put it up. It's going to say, join the team. You can improve clinical trials, get cures to market faster, save lives. Who wouldn't want to do that, right? Well, to be honest with you, empowering patients to be partners in innovation is not as easy as it sounds, and it's actually the hottest topic right now in healthcare innovation. How to capture that patient voice. In fact, the Federal Food and Drug Administration just last month issued regulations and guidelines suggesting how innovators can voluntarily capture this patient voice in a systematic way so that it's statistically important to the outcome. Are you ready for that? Probably not. And the reason why is because it's complicated. And that's not just a social media term, though I do think it applies because social media is one of the most important ways in which patients are finding out information about treatment and cures. It's complicated because even though we all may have the same disease, we have different ways of evaluating our patient preferences. Let me give you some examples of patient preference. You will all individually determine how you evaluate the risk of the procedure, what the weight of the evidence you require to make a decision about whether to go forward with that procedure, and oftentimes, frankly, you're going to consider the cost of the procedure. And that's going to change with everybody according to your coverage and your life. But the whole point of those considerations is for you to be that patient partner with your healthcare team, sharing in that decision process so that your choices can be honored and given dignity. Let me give you a few more examples of how this plays out because there are some important considerations around risk. Now, I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand, but if you're like me, you have headaches a lot. And maybe if you're like me, you take medication for your headaches, right? How many of us have actually read the back of the bottle on the medication? A few, but not many, because if you're like me, you think, well, the risk for taking this is pretty low for me. But you take that same medication, and now I've got to give it to my child. Let me tell you something. I'm going to be measuring it. I'm going to write down the time I gave it. I'm going to watch my child and see if my child reacts to it. Because my tolerance for risk with my child is 0. Let me give you another example of moderate risk. We know that women over the age of 50 are recommended to get a mammogram, but we also know that there are large numbers of women who, for their own personal reasons, have decided not to take that recommendation. Among the different types of reasons given are the risk of exposure to radiation and also the general discomfort. So what if women were patient partners with innovators and could address those two risks by bringing down or eliminating the risk of exposure and offering testing in convenient, comfortable settings like the local mall? Maybe then our mothers and daughters and friends would seek to get a mammogram sooner. Maybe then they'd be diagnosed sooner, treated sooner, at less cost with better outcomes. Wouldn't that be great? I mean, that's what this is all about, saving lives. But let me give you the ultimate example. What if the outcome, what if the potential risk was death? and you knew you didn't have much longer to live, like my brother Frank. Maybe you would make that same decision he did and say, you know what? 6 stem cell treatments, 6 years, I think I've had enough. I'm going to go home and ride it out. Or maybe you decide, you know what, I don't have much longer to live anyway, let's do it. Whatever your risk assessment may be, we know that we need to find a new way to capture that voice. So what if you, as a patient partner, were able to directly influence the clinical trial design? What if all of those people like you that had similar preferences were set up in a subset and you could have a clinical trial just for that subset? That would be phenomenal. What if you were actually able to talk to the regulators that were making a decision about approving that drug or new therapy? What if you were able to tell them about the benefits it had offered in your life? What if you were then able to take your voice and match it across an entire patient community and change public policies, including coverage for care for those treatments? Wouldn't that be great? Well, I have to tell you, I do not think it takes us reinventing the wheel. As I said before, I have a lot of experience in changing public policy. And there are grassroots strategies already available to us as patients to be applied to a new environment. Instead of changing laws this time, how about we change lives? I submit to you that your voice is needed. And there is a powerful way for you to get involved. Maybe we need to just create an entirely new patient voice organization. One that acts to build that bridge between patients and researchers, between people who pay to fund that research and the payers on the insurance side. Wouldn't it be phenomenal if we could all get together and then use that social media I was talking about a little while ago to educate other patients about how to get involved with the clinical trial or how drugs and new therapies get to the market in the first place? Maybe we have a peer-to-peer patient organization that supports one another. Maybe we all band together and go change public policy and ultimately bring down the cost of health care. I think the future is bright, and I'm ready. Are you? I believe you all have a compelling story, one that innovators want to hear. You are the sons and daughters. You are the moms and dads. You are the grandmamas, the loved ones, the coworkers. You like walking that dog. You like reading the paper and watching TV and having a good laugh. And for some of us, I can tell you that the question is not going to be, how do I get my health back? The question is going to be, how do I get my life back? Because if you're like Frank, sometimes you know it's never going to be the same. But you want to live your life with dignity. Threading patient voice throughout the innovation process really can make a difference in the way our clinical trials are set up. Really can expedite the way the Federal Food and Drug Administration seeks approval for drugs and new therapies. Really can change the way payers decide what they're going to cover. Really can change the way our healthcare system is designed. But it takes balance. Balance between the expectations of all those payers, all those patients, all those approvals. It takes skilled advocacy to make sure that the right grassroots strategy is in place to affect those outcomes. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, what we want is to have patient voice given dignity. We want innovators to have the opportunity to deliver on their promise of improved life. We want to be patient partners in innovation so that we can all leave a legacy of hope, like my brother Frank. Thank you.